Thank you for joining the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston for our weekly online ministers forum. I'm the Reverend Dr. Colin Bossen, Senior Minister of the Congregation. These programs are conversations with community organizers, scholars, religious leaders, artists, and others about how we can collectively address the present crises. Their purpose is to offer members of our community and all who wish to join us online science-based resources and liberation-oriented inspiration to get us through these difficult times. Today, I'm joined by John Bunchy Crear. He was a member of the People's Party 2 and later the Black Panther Party here in Houston. We'll be discussing the history and legacy of the party. Bunchy was an organizer with the Panthers both in Texas and California, and a photographer with the Black Panther Intercommunal News Service for several years. Bunchy, thank you for joining us. I wonder if you could start out by just kind of giving us an overview of who the Panthers were and what they stood for.
Well, one thing that people have to remember that the Black Panther Party, when it was founded by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, the name of the party was the Black Panther Party for self-defense, not offense. Mm-hmm. So and the reason for that, because of police killings and police brutality, they both want to show Black and other oppressed people, because we weren't a racist organization. I mean, it wanted to show that we as a people had a right to defend ourselves and defend our community, that we had a right to bear arms, and if we were attacked, that we had a right to defend ourselves. That was in October 1966. So this year will be the 55th year of the founding of the Black Panther Party. And later on, we dropped the self-defense because we considered the party to be a political party, not in the sense of the Democrat and Republican, but in the sense that we felt that everything that affects our life and your life is political, so we dropped the self-defense and it just became the Black Panther Party.
So what was the sort of overall program of the party? I know that there was sort of the 10-point platform that came later.
Well, with the 10-point platform program, in fact, it was when the party started, Bobby and Huey had sat down and at Bobby's apartment on the kitchen table, and they wrote down the 10-point platform of the program. And basically it stated what we wanted and what we needed. Just like one of the points was decent housing, decent medical attention, the right to fair and equal employment. And so basically, it's a thing like some people, they'll clump us in with the civil rights movement, which was a necessary movement, but we consider ourselves a human rights movement because we believe that some of the things I just mentioned are basic human rights that everybody has. I mean, that's one of the things that this pandemic or epidemic or whatever you want to call it, it is exposed the whole healthcare system, mm-hmm. how it's unjust. Every time you turn around and say, well, it's affecting Black and brown people of color more than there's a reason for that, So these are some of the things, because when we started our programs, many people know of the free breakfast program. They'll talk about it all the time. We started free clinics. We did testing for sickle cell anemia. To me, was one of our most important programs. People don't realize that, because sickle cell at that time nobody had even talked about it. I didn't know about it. Mm-hmm. Nobody knew about it. But sickle cell anemia is a disease that affects mainly Black people. 99%, of sickle cell are Black. So we started testing for sickle cell, and so we had many programs, clothing programs, all these things, like I said, we consider as basic rights. And that's why you have, like the breakfast program, that's why you have breakfast in schools now, because our whole thing was how can you learn on an empty stomach, So, like I said, we were a human rights organization.
So I think that the human rights I mean, from Malcolm, what I understand is the human rights was about partially having more of an internationalist focus than a national focus, saying that everybody throughout the world deserves these rights. They're not civil rights.
Right.
They're basic human rights.
Basic human rights.
And that part of his project was appealing to the United Nations to say that the United States is not granting its citizens human rights.
Well, the thing about it, that's why, that's another thing. Like I said, people use the word civil rights. No, we weren't part of it, and we were not a part of the Black nationalist movement because we didn't believe in nationalism. We believed that European Union came up with the concept of intercommunalism because we believed that the whole world was a community. And many of the things that he talked about in 1970 when he came up in the community, I mean, they're here today. He talked about in 1970 how one day you'll be able to find out in seconds or minutes things that are happening all the way around the world, and how the world's economy, because we were all one giant community, and one day it would be all interconnected. That's what they call globalization. He talked about these things back in 1970. And so even our struggle, like I said, we believed in our fight was for Black people in particular, only because we felt that we had to show our people that we could do things for ourselves, and we had to unite our community. But our struggle was for Black people in particular, but all oppressed people around the world. And so the whole movement of the Black Panther Party became a worldwide movement. You had Polynesian Panthers, you had Panthers in England, you had, it became a worldwide movement.
I want to talk a bit more about the local history of the Black Panther Party, because I understand that it sort of started with a separate organization called the People's Party 2, which was founded by Carl Hampton, and then became a chapter of the National Black Panther Party. So could you tell us a bit about what the People's Party 2 was?
Yeah, well, see, Carl Hampton, he grew up in an area which is still there. It's called Pleasantville. And at the time, it was almost like a Black suburbs because it's a little ways out. Back then, it seemed further out because there's no freeways, but it's out by 610 and I-10. It's behind, if you know where the Budweiser refinery is, or whatever they call it, bottling company, it's right behind there. And so Carl grew up there. Carl, in fact, my mother taught at Pleasantville Elementary School, and she remembers Carl. And she said Carl was a good student, and he was a pleasure having in class. But Carl was a musician, along with his brother. His brother was a musician too. So Carl was traveling the country with his band, and they went through Oakland, California. So while he was in Oakland, he became acquainted with the Black Panther Party. And so he started doing community work with the party up there, helping with the breakfast programs and selling papers and that type of thing. So when he was coming back to Houston, he asked, could he start a chapter of the Black Panther Party in Houston? Well, at that time, the Black Panther Party had spread so fast across the country that they kind of put a halt on new chapters. And so what Carl did, he came back to Houston. He got a job over at the Sears over on Wheelers, which is not there anymore. But at that time, they had a lunch counter, like many places, and as a dishwasher to raise money so he could get an office. And he started an organization called People's Party 2. And the reason he called it People's Party 2, because he said the Black Panther Party was the vanguard party, was the #1 party, and that's why he called it People's Party 2. So the People's Party 2 went by everything, the 10-point platform program, all the rules and regulations of the Black Panther Party, and so the Black Panther Party newspaper. It was just by another name. And so that's how People's Party 2 was founded, which eventually became the Houston chapter of the Black Panther Party.
So I want to talk a bit more about Carl Hampton and who he was and why he was important. I mean, I think that some people from Houston, or many people from Houston, might be familiar with him, but he's, I think, less well known outside of Houston.
Right.
And I think many people now, because of this new movie about the assassination of Fred Hampton called Judas and the Black Messiah, have some sense of the role that the FBI played in organizing a police hit squad that assassinated Fred Hampton, and Fred Hampton's work as the chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party to really build what was called the Rainbow Coalition,
Right.
a coalition of working class people that represented then and now a sort of profound threat to the ruling classes. And I'm wondering if you could talk a bit more about Carl Hampton, but also sort of about the Dowling Street so-called shootout and the assassination of Carl Hampton by the HPD.
Right. Yeah, because you're right. Many people outside, and even the ones that know about Carl, they think Carl and Fred were related, which they were not. You know, they just have. In fact, I was in L.A. when they premiered. It's another film that came out that was released in theaters. It's called The Black Panther Party: Vanguard of the Revolution. And afterward, they had a question and answer. And this guy, he said he was from Houston. He said, "Yeah, well, Fred Hampton and Carl Hampton was cousins." I'm like, no, they weren't cousins. But so Carl, like I say, he started People's Party too, and what had happened that led up to his murder and assassination was that, like I said, they sold the Black Panther Party newspaper, and the office was right on the corner of 2M and Dowling, which is now Emancipation, and so Carl was pulling up to the office, and it was a brother, a comrade, was selling the newspaper, and this police was harassing him. And so Carl got out the car and walked up. And at that time, Carl had a .45 strapped to his chest. And so the police asked him, what was he doing with that gun? And Carl told him that wasn't none of his business, that he had a right to carry a gun, because at that time it was legal to openly carry a weapon, as long as it wasn't concealed. And so the police started walking up on him, and Carl told him to stop, don't come any closer. And so the police went to pull his weapon, and Carl put his weapon, and Carl was a little faster than the policeman. So they backed up into the office. The police called for backup, but what they didn't expect was people from the community. I mean, people poured out when they heard what was going on. They poured out and stood in front of the office. They told the police, "Hey, y'all not going to do nothing to these, to these people." Because I mean, like I say, the party, we supported the community. We took care of the community, and so it was a standoff. And eventually, the police backed off. And so for about a week, I mean, it was people came from all over the city of Houston, Black people, from Sunnyside, Fifth Ward, Acres Homes, you name it. They came down there and to protect the office and protect Carl. So they were having, on July 26, 1970, they were having a rally at Emancipation Park. And these two women, and the more I thought about it, these two women probably were part of the whole plan. But anyway, these two women came down, and they told Carl it was 4 white men on the roof of St. John's Baptist Church, which is right at McGowan and Dowling. Dowling at the time was called Dowling Street. And so Carl and a guy, Barty Hale, he's a white guy. He was a part of the John Brown Revolutionary Society. They walked down the street to see what was going on. So when they got down the street, the police, the guys on the roof was police. They were snipers. I mean, you don't have snipers to defend something, or to the snipers are killers. I mean, we've all seen snipers in movies, war movies or whatever. And the fourth guy was a reporter. He was a spotter. This guy had interviewed Carl 2 or 3 days before this incident happened. So he was up there with the police to point out who Carl was. And so when they got down there, the police, they opened fire. You know, they hit Carl. Barty Hill got hit in the shoulder. And this woman, I mean, heroic, this woman in the Volkswagen drove down there and put Carl in the car and drove him to the hospital. But he died a few hours later. And so, I mean, and several other people, Mickey Leland, Congressman Mickey Leland, in fact, came down there that night because him and Carl were good friends. They used to have classes together. Before Carl started People's Party too, he used to meet with students from TSU and U of H, and they would have classes together, political education classes and that type of thing. So Mickey Leland got arrested that night.
Wow.
Also, Johnny Coward, who was a member of People's Party, he got shot in the heel. It blew his heel off. He had a limp for the rest of his life. So, and then the thing about it, it was all planned because blocks away, there were busloads of police waiting for this to happen. So when this happened, once they shot Carl, then they came in and they just started arresting people. Anybody that was around, they just started arresting. So the whole thing was set up and it was planned.
Could you put that a little bit into sort of a national context for us? I mean, because we have the assassination of Fred Hampton, we have the assassination of Carl Hampton, and I mean, I think it's, you know, it's well, there was just this targeted assassination campaign, it seems like, right, against the.
Well, you know, the thing about it is, it's like Nixon, and this came out through the COINTEL program, counterintelligence program that the FBI ran. Nixon, 3 days before he was inaugurated, called J. Edgar Hoover, and he told J. Edgar Hoover he wanted his #1 priority to be the destruction of the Black Panther Party. And so many people saw the raids by the police and this type of, the police wasn't nothing but lapdogs, or pawns, or whatever you want to call them. Everything came from the FBI and above, you know. That's how, it's just like who called the Black Panther Party the greatest threat to the internal security of the Black Panther Party, of the United States. That the Black Panther Party was the greatest, internal threat. So their objective was to destroy the Black Panther Party. And they, because for one thing, when the party started, I mean, most of the leadership was jailed and the party just grew. It's just like this old saying, oppression breeds resistance. I mean, all you did was make, in the party, and Huey, I mean, they knew how to use the media and use what was going on. Well, the party just grew, because, like, say, Huey was in prison, accused of murdering a police officer and attempted murder of another police officer, which he eventually was released. Bobby Seale, I don't know if you've seen the Chicago movie on Netflix called The Chicago 7. But originally it was the Chicago 8. And the reason they called it the Chicago 7 because Bobby Seale said he didn't want to be represented by their attorneys. He wanted his own attorney. And at the time, Charles Gehry, very good man, hell of a lawyer, he was the party's lawyer. He couldn't get there at that time. So Bobby Seale asked to be represented by himself. And the judge refused. And so Bobby kept demanding to be represented by himself. So finally, the judge ordered him to be tied to a chair and gagged. And it's something, because if you, like in the Vanguard movie, you see Bobby, they got his mouth gagged. He's still, So the judge really got pissed. So you had Erica Huggins and Bobby Seale. He's got that going on. And then they charged him. He just passed, just like the thing in Chicago, he was just passing through. This was during the Democratic Convention in 1968. And they asked him to come speak. He spoke for 15 minutes, and they charged him with inciting a riot. Same thing. At that same time it was going, they charged him in New Haven with murder. He was just passing through, and it was a member of the party was murdered, and they accused him and Erica Huggins of plotting to kill the guy. So all these things are going on, but the party just grew. So then they said, well, we gotta, release the hounds, as they say when they hunt. You know what I mean? So that's what they did. I mean, you had 2 days after the murder of Fred Hampton, you had the office in L.A., which was the first time that SWAT was used in the United States. They raided the office in Los Angeles on 41st and Central, and they blew the door open, and the comrades opened fire and resisted. They tried to come through the roofs. Comrades opened fire. But all these instances, just like with Fred, but like in Los Angeles, they were all charged with, attempted murder, police, assault, because some police got wounded and that kind of thing. But they were acquitted because we were defending our place. As I said, the Black Panther Party for self-defense, that we had a right to defend our life and our property. So they were all acquitted, same as the people that was in the house when they murdered Fred. They charged them. The charges would drop because in the case of Fred Hampton, once the investigation was cleared, it was only one round that came from the inside of the house, and that was from Mark Clark, who was also murdered that same night as Fred Hampton. And they said what had happened, he was at the front door with his shotgun, and the police, even before they came in, they opened fire and started shooting into the house. Well, they hit Mark Clark in the heart, and he had his finger on the trigger of the shotgun went off. That was the only shot that came from inside the house. Everything else came from outside the house, from the police. So they were definitely murders but just like here in Houston, and when I tell people that they shot, the mayor of Houston was Louis Welch, and the police chief was Herman Short. And I'll never forget, they called a press conference, and it was on like Channel 13, 11, on all the major stations. And at the press conference, they said that within a year, all members of the Black Panther Party would be dead, in jail, or cease to be revolutionaries. We sitting there watching that, and they meant it. But I joined the party at 19. I didn't expect to be 21, let alone I'll be 69 next month. So, but they meant it, and they came at us.
What made the Black Panther Party so dangerous? You self-defense,
right?
Feeding kids, right? You're talking about providing health care for people, trying to help get people their basic human rights. So why was this so dangerous to Richard Nixon, J. Edgar Hoover, the mayor of Houston?
Well, the thing about it is, just like when I said that J. Edgar Hoover said that the Black Panther Party was the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. A month after that, he came out and said the free breakfast program was the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States, because what the programs did, they brought us closer to people. Well, people could see who we really were, because the media and the government portrayed us all as thugs and criminals and that type of thing. Well, the programs brought us closer to people, and people looked and said, well, hey, they just like us. These young men and women, they just like us. They're not what is being portrayed on the TV. I remember when we opened up the office in Fourth Ward, the Houston Post, at the time it was the Chronicle and the Post, they came over there and they interviewed all these elderly people in Fourth Ward. And they were shocked, because this one woman told them we were like angels. She said, they're like angels sent from heaven. She said, they look out for us seniors. She said, they feed the kids. They do all kinds of things for community. They're like angels. So that was a threat, because, it exposed all the lies, and plus we were able to talk to people and teach people what our ideology was and our thinking was, and the whole thing. So that was, just like doing slavery, it was against the law to teach a slave to read, because knowledge is power,
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that that's right. The showing that the lie of capitalism in the United States is not for the people, but for profit and for the powerful is,
Right.
I think, the most dangerous, it is the most dangerous idea. And I think actually we've just kind of seen that, right, in terms of this horrible storm that we've been through, the fact.
Oh, yeah. Like I tell people, follow the money.
Right, exactly.
You follow the money, you see what the problem is, because and especially here in Texas. I mean, I remember growing up. I was born here in fifth. I was born in Fifth Ward, St. Elizabeth Church, which was a Catholic hospital, and I remember as a kid growing up, man, Sam Houston was my hero. I had 2 or 3 books on Sam Houston. And the thing about it is that, I was reading an article a few months ago, and this guy wrote an article on the Texas Rangers, the true history of what the Texas Rangers were about, because the Texas Rangers was created to fight against the indigenous people here, and they massacred a bunch of our Mexican brothers and sisters. That's what they were created for. They're shown as this, this great law and order, but Travis and them, that's what they were created for. So I mean, it's just like with the 1619 Project. It was Trump. They're trying to fight because it tells the true history of the United States.
Well, I mean, I think that so much of the history that people think of, or so many of the institutions that we think of, are rooted in these kinds of practices of white supremacy. I mean, I know, for instance, that the police forces in the South, many of them have their roots in the sort of slave patrols from the before the Civil War and whatnot, and that legacy, you see that very much carried forward in the way policing continues to happen. I'm wondering if you could spend a little bit of time reflecting on what the lessons and legacies of the Black Panther Party for racial justice organizers today are.
Well, the thing about it, and that's what I know, a lot of the young people, they're frustrated. And, in the party, we knew that the struggle, because see, we didn't believe in just reforming the system. We believed in changing this whole system of, racism, white supremacy, and capitalism. And it's a protracted struggle. It's something in the party we would say that you don't go from A to Z in alphabet. You go A, B, C, D, and that's the way the struggle is. And many young people, they get frustrated, but you got to make, as long as people keep pushing, and everybody can have a role. You don't have to be, that's one of the things, like the Black United Front, they have a saying that say you can be in the front, you can be on the side, or you can be in the back. Just do something. Everybody can play a role to make change. We live in this generation, especially now, everything is instant. You microwave, you throw your potato in there, something you used to bake for an hour and a half, now you throw it in the microwave and it's ready in 5 minutes, But things don't work that way. And that's the thing about it, what people don't understand and what people are learning. I mean, it's just like with the movie of Judas and the Black Messiah, or the movie I mentioned earlier, Black Panther Party, Vanguard of Revolution. If you haven't seen it, it's a good look. And it's things in there, people pick this apart, but the main thing about it is released to a mass audience, where people say, well, I didn't know this. They might have heard of Fred Hampton, but they don't know the whole story. I've had people, my barber, he's not political. The day it came out, he sent me a text. I just watched the movie. I'm gonna do some research. So that's the thing about movies like this. I mean, we could pick them apart. Well, they could have showed this, or they didn't show enough of that. But the main thing about it is to get it out there. And then when you get it out there, people start talking about it. like people are doing. Everybody, I mean, I got all kinds of, what do you think about, so people start talking about it. And so, the main thing, the legacy of the party, for one thing, I was reading an article last week. It was a professor, I think she was from Columbia University, one of them, and they were asking her, why are people still talking about the Black Panther Party over 50 years after, it went out of existence? And she was saying how the Black Panther Party was a very unique organization. She said it was a lot of organizations out there back then. You had all kind of radical but the thing about the party, for one thing, of course, is what the self-defense. But then also we had ideology, and then we also touched people. I mean, years later, it'd be people walk over to me. I remember you used to feed me breakfast, or used to, so it touched people, and they don't forget. It's just like one of my comrades was over the other day, and his son is in college, and his son called him, and he said, Daddy, you've always told me about the Black Panther Party and what y'all did and stuff like that. And he said, I saw the movie Judas and the Black Messiah. He said, man, y'all was some bad motherfuckers, And that's the way with a lot of people. You can tell them something, but when they see, because the thing about the party also, it was 24/7. We didn't go to work at 9 and got off at 5, and then we became Black Panthers. It was something that we lived by every day, all day, 352 days out of the year. And so that was another unique thing about the party. I mean, that was our job. That was what we did. And, people know all about all power to people. And I mean, it's still to the day, it's said all around the world. But our motto and what we lived by was serving the people, body and soul. And that's what we live by.
So we're running close to the end of our time, and I'm, this forum is for a congregation, the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, which is a historically white church. It was, I guess, the first church in Houston to vote to racially integrate back in 1954, and has sort of grown in its multiracial membership since then, but is still predominantly white. And I'm wondering what you would like to say to a community like ours that has made a commitment to supporting Black Lives Matter and dismantling white supremacy.
Well, the thing about it, I was going to say earlier, I was born in 1952, so I was raised in doing segregation. My whole world as a child was white, as far as things that I saw, on TV, or the police, or I remember, and people don't realize this, but we could go to the zoo, but you couldn't go to Herman Park. You couldn't step on University of Houston campus unless you was a maid or porter or something like that. So, I was raised during that time. And the thing about it is, that's another thing, is that, going to your question, is that, racism, white supremacy, I mean, white people have to start really dealing with that. That's one of the biggest problems in the country. Like I say, just like with the 1619 Project, how it's being fought, or when Obama was elected, you had a bunch of angry white men because they don't want to accept the fact, just like William Barr and who's an attorney general, and says no such thing as white exceptionalism or whatever, because for one thing, they have never been denied a job because they were white. They have never been stopped by the police because they were white. They've never been denied housing because they were white. And all these things I experienced and grew up with. And so that's the thing. Like I told you with the Black Panther Party, we said we're dealing with Black people particularly because one thing, you cannot come in my neighborhood and go door to door and they'll say, "What the hell this white boy doing over here? What do you know what I'm saying?" It's something that you have to go in your community and educate them about the ills of racism and white supremacy. I can't do it. Same thing, like I said, I can't go in, in West U or Rice Village or talk to them about, it's not going to be heard. So that's the main thing I was saying, which y'all integrating in 54. I mean, it's just like Malcolm and other people said, Sundays is the most segregated time in this country. Everybody goes to a Black church, to white church, you got your churches integrated, or you got Osteen, there's quite a few Blacks there. And but on Sundays, that's the most segregated time in America.
It is. I mean, I hope to see a more multiracial church because I want to see a more multiracial society. But that's
right. Yeah, we get to the point where we don't have to talk about race. Right. Because see, I'm to the point that I'm so tired of hearing, well, this is the first Black this, and this is the first Black that. We've been talking about that since the 60s. You know what I mean? First Black mayor of New Jersey, first Black mayor of Chicago, first Black city council, first Black. Come on now, And so we still get that now. Well, it's first Black. It's time to, get past all that. I mean, we got a long way to go because saying the other side, they showed themselves on January the 6th.
Oh, yeah.
The hate. And you're not going to change their mind. Like we're sitting here have a conversation, decent conversation. But that's what I was telling somebody yesterday. People are like, well, why can't they be more bipartisan? You know why? Because there's women in Congress, women in the Senate, it's Blacks in Congress, Blacks in the Senate. Back then when they was talking about, well, Tip and Neil, and then they used to sit around, they, you know why? Because they surrounded was a bunch of older white men, they go into the lounge at the Senate, smoking stogies and drinking whiskey, and well, Tip, you scratch my back and I'll scratch your back. Well, see, all that is over. And you got a lot of people pissed off about that. They see as, I've read, I don't know how many hard I see is a lot. You have a lot of people seeing their grip on this country slip away. I was, other day I was seeing this, they put the statistic up and they were saying like back in 1950 something, the population of the United States was like 90% white. Now it's like maybe 55%. So it's a whole new dynamic. Yeah. And it's a lot of people, they don't like that new dynamic, it was all right to, the Statue of Liberty, give me your free, your poor, and all that stuff, but they wouldn't talk about a bunch of, brown and black and yellow and, people.
I feel like I could keep talking to you for quite some time, but I've got to end our forum. So
Well, I'm enjoying the conversation. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, hopefully we can have you at the church in person sometime when this pandemic is all over for another conversation.
Yeah, right. When it's over, anytime, I'd be glad to come through. And
well, thank you so much. And for our listeners, I know that we had said we were going to do a forum series on Freedmanstown this month, honoring Black History Month, but the weather has disrupted that, and that's going to be now spread out over the next few months.
We had an office over there, and back then, like I say, it's not there. But even back then, the majority of Fourth Ward was owned by absentee landlords.
Yeah. Where was the office in Freedmanstown?
It was on Pierce. Right when Pierce came right into Freedmanstown. And then we had a house on Wilson. I'll tell you what, we wasn't a house, it was a duplex. We had upstairs down. It was right there at Robin and Wilson where the market is.
Yeah.
So Fourth Ward, I knew, we knew very well. And, Allen Parkway Village, because one of my jobs was to go and collect donations for the breakfast program. And so I would go to Allen Parkway Village, and A lot of them kids had never been out the neighborhood, never.
Mm.
And so I would take them with me because I go to Fifth Ward all around collect donations. They would, they ain't be ready to fight to get in the car, but because I can only take so many. But I mean, it just shows you the disparity and
Sure.
you know what people grow up in.
Okay, I'm gonna say my closing bits here, and then we can.
All right. All right,
so
brother.
for those of you who are with us for the first time, let me say a few words about Unitarian Universalism. We're a religious tradition that celebrates the possibility of goodness within each human heart, the transformative power of love, and the clarifying force of reason. We believe we need not think alike to love alike. If you found this video to be helpful, please consider joining us for our weekly worship service. It's posted online each Sunday at 10:30 a.m. and features music and prayers in addition to a sermon. And we'd like to thank our staff for making this video possible. It was produced by Christian Holmes. Alma Viscara assisted with the editing. We'll see you all online soon, and soon as possible is for us to gather again in person. And please remember that no matter how isolated you feel, we're all in this together.